Hello, welcome to BlueGate Studios, mixing tips and tricks on YouTube. I'm the lead engineer here at BlueGate, Alexander Marks. Today we're going to be discussing the 5 elements that you need to have in your song in order for it to sound clean, loud, and professional. Now all 5 of these tips are very important to the outcome of your song, but I like to argue that the first 2 tips are the most important because it has to do with song composition and sound choices. However, it is imperative that all 5 of these tips are met and are met with high fidelity, considering that if you just lack one of them, your songs will not stand up with the very best in your respective genre. Number 1, high quality audio samples and audio sources. Getting high quality audio samples is a lot easier said than done. I can't tell you how many songs that I've worked on where everything sounds pristine except for one sample, and that sample usually is some sort of acapella or something ripped off of YouTube or any other online extractor. The reason why this is bad is because just having one low quality audio source can ruin the entire mix. It's putting an amateur stamp on a professional sounding song. While there are ways to navigate around this problem by using something like Isotope RX or Waves Denoise, it is still imperative that you find the correct audio source for the sound that you're looking for. Whether or not that means spending a little extra time looking for the correct sound source, or even changing the sound entirely. And trust me, this will make your mix sound infinitely better. Number 2, correct composition and instrument choices. This is very similar to tip number 1, but this is dealing more with the types of sounds that you choose. Whether it's recorded instruments or MIDI instruments, you want to make sure that every sound that you have works together and works together well within its own composition. A good example of this would be maybe you're working on a song in A minor and everything in the song sounds great. Your guitar's punchy, dynamic, they sound bright, your vocals sit well, but there's one problem. The bass just does not sit well in the mix. Maybe you chose this key because everything sounded great, but when doing so, it locks your bass into either a very high octave or really low sub-octave, which cannot be heard. Sometimes the fix to this is either just changing out the instrument from maybe a oscillated bass to an actual bass guitar, because maybe the bass guitar has some harmonics that the sub-oscillator doesn't have, which can actually make that low octave work. Could be as simple as just changing the key entirely, but all these things are very important and should be considered at the start of your song creation. A tip to a well-composed song is making sure that not too many instruments share the same frequency range. What I mean by this is maybe in your chorus you don't want to have 5 or 6 synths that are all really high pitched happening at the same time. You're going to have masking issues, it's going to sound cluttered, and it's going to not leave very much room for the lead vocal or any vocals at all. You want to pick instruments that really worked well together and balance each other out on the frequency spectrum. Not to say you need to fill out every single spot on the frequency spectrum, but you need to leave room for other things so that they have space to be heard and to be dynamic. Poor composition and instrument choices can actually lead to a lot of problems down the line when you're mixing and mastering. For example, having too many kicks in the chorus or the verses, which can lead to limiting problems in its transparency. Or a problem that I experience quite a lot from my clients, which is overcomposing and having way too many instruments happening at the same time, which can lead to some very difficult mixing decisions and can actually hinder your ability to make your song very loud in the mastering process. So overall, don't overcomplicate the arrangement and composition of your song. Usually less is more, but keep in mind the framework of the genre that you're working in. Number 3, front end and the importance of high quality audio recordings. At this point, you may have seen a trend with some of these tips where just one thing that stands out could actually ruin the entire song. And this is not exclusive to just good sound sources and samples or instrument choice and composition. I can't stress out how important this is, but please record in a real studio. I know it's easier to record in a bedroom, it's more comfortable, maybe you have some engineering friends that help you out from time to time, but your mixes will benefit greatly, and I mean tremendously, from just spending some extra cash that you have at a real studio with a real mic and a real preamp. I won't go super in depth on this tip because it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, better recordings means better song in some sense, but just make sure that if you're putting 100% of your effort into the production, that you're also putting 100% effort into the recordings, because it will show. I won't get into what kind of mics you should be using or what kind of preamps you should be using, because it really differs from person to person, instrument to instrument. It depends on the studio, what gear they have. But I'll be making some dedicated videos on preamps and microphones and when you should be using a certain preamp versus another, or which microphone you should be choosing for what singer or rapper or instrument. Number 4 and number 5, mixing and mastering. I coupled these two together because in this day and age, they're pretty synonymous with each other, and usually you'll get your mix done and your master done by the same engineer. However, you can't have a great song produced well, great audio samples, great composition, great recordings, and have it mixed by somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. I actually plan on having an entire series based off of mixing, the use of EQs, compression, saturation, limiting, soft clipping, etc. And you're more than welcome to learn from those and mix yourself, and I implore you to learn how to mix and master yourself. However, it can be pretty beneficial to have your song mixed by a professional and mastered by a professional. You can hear exactly what your song's supposed to sound like, and it'll help your song to compete with the very best at the top of the charts. Things you don't want to do are get your song mixed and mastered online through these online services like Lander. Sorry, Lander, you were great in high school, but not anymore. You want to take your song to the next level, you need a professional on it. Don't cut corners. Don't settle for the SoundCloud mastering. Don't settle for the online mastering. If you want your music to be heard, you have to make sure that what is heard sounds the best that it could possibly be. You want to be that one friend in your musician circle that everybody looks at and is like, wow, what kind of team do you have? I want that team. I want my songs to sound that good. And when you are that person, you're not just going to be that person in your group. Everybody online is going to listen to your music and go, wow, this sounds incredible. Everything is consistent, clean, loud, punchy, dynamic. Composition is great. The music is just great. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters, is great music sounding great.